Hello everyone and welcome to this quick demonstration on how to use the bump add utility node. So you'll find the bump add utility node within the material graph itself. So I'm just going to edit the material graph of this material to bring up currently what is attached to the model. So here I can see there is a leather texture that is attached to the bump, but it might be that I want to have more than one texture driving what the kind of bump feature is of this model. So I'm going to do from my textures library, I'm just going to locate a scratches JPEG and drag and drop that into that material graph. Now if I try and attach this to the bump element of the plastic material, you'll see that it just replaces that original leather one. So if I wanted to combine both of them, I need to add in that bump add utility node. So to do this, what I can do is I can select the blue line that connects the leather texture to the plastic, right click, and from the utility flyout, select bump add. Here I can then connect my scratches texture map to bump 2. And hopefully you can then see in the background that it's applied both then the leather texture and the scratches on, giving that impression of embossing. The bump add node has 3 different parameters that you can change. The first one is the ratio, and this is how much texture is kind of added to that material. If you leave it on the default as 0.5, it's a 50-50 split between the two textures. If we reduce that number, you will see that it is bump 1 that is the dominant one. And if I increase it closer to 1, it is bump 2 that is then the dominant one. So this is how you can determine which texture you see more on your material. We then have the weight options. These kind of act as a multiplier between whatever the bump height value is in the individual textures. So if I double click on the leather texture, I can see at the moment the bump height is set to 0.3, and in scratches the bump height is set to 1. Going back to the bump add node, what I can do here is I can say, well, for the leather I want it to be 3 times whatever the value is set within there, and for the scratches let's just do half of the value. And again, that can then help further manipulate how those textures interact with the material. With all of these parameters, they can also be driven by a texture. So what I can do here is I can right click in the scene and pick a color gradient. And if I select that node and hit Let's See on my keyboard, I'll be able to see how it's reacting with the model in the background. And I can then start to kind of manipulate the positioning of it to how I want it to be. When I'm happy with kind of like the location, I can then attach this to the bump pad, and I can, for example, attach that to weight 1, which will control the multiplier for the leather. So I just move that window out of the way. We can see some of the leather bump on the left hand side, but on the right hand side it's smoothed out and it's just scratches. So that's how you can kind of control the bump pad with different textures. Now you may want it that you have a texture kind of all on the main parts of the model, but not on the edges. So this is where you can use things like a contour option. Okay, so again, hitting C on my keyboard, I can see how it is manipulating the model in the background, and then I can start to make changes to how I want the final model to look. So here, as a quick tip, I would always deselect the contour width in pixels, because the width of these will change depending on the zoom level. Whereas if you change it to be the units of the actual model itself, they are fixed regardless of what the zoom level is. Can make some further changes to get the kind of the look I'm after, so it's therefore just focusing in on those smaller surfaces around the embossed areas. And I can then attach those to the weight 1, and I'm also going to attach it to weight 2, so it affects both of the textures within there. So you should then see, if I just close this material graph down, that those bump elements are just applied to the flat surfaces and not on the edges of this model. Thank you for listening.